Hi everyone, this is your host Greg. Our featured playwright, Patrick Gabridge, has an event coming up in June, The Nature Plays, a series of site-specific plays at Mount Auburn Cemetery in Cambridge, Mass. From June 1st through 9th. For more information, see mountauburn.org and navigate to The Nature Plays.
Boston Podcast Players is supported by a grant from the Bob Jolly Charitable Trust.
Boston Podcast Players.
The story thus far.
Cast of characters.
Empress of
An
Rome.
entity or demon.
A run-of-the-mill Polish guy in his 40s. Setting.
In a small hut
A
in the
long
city of
forgotten
Beijing.
era that lives both in the
Act
past.
1,
We
Scene 1.
create the
possible.
world with the stories we tell
Act
about
1,
ourselves.
Scene
Because
2.
Steven, he could
Act
be anywhere,
1,
right?
Scene 3.
Don't give up the ship!
Cannon fire.
Bianca pushes the stop button. The end.
Welcome everyone to Boston Podcast Players, Boston's virtual podcast stage for new works by local playwrights. I'm Greg Lamb, the host of the show, and today I'm joined by today's guest co-host, faculty member at Emerson College, and the newly named Associate Artistic Director of Lyric Stage, Courtney O'Connor. Courtney, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Greg.
Courtney, you were named the Associate Artistic Director of Lyric this past July, so congratulations.
Thank you.
Would you like to say anything about the current and upcoming season for Lyric Stage?
This season is moving along. We just opened on Friday night our second show, The Roommate by Jen Silverman. It is a new play, so supporting new playwrights, and it stars Adrian Kristansky and Paula Plum.
Oh,
So
wow.
I encourage everyone to come and see it because those are two amazing, amazing actresses.
Oh, that sounds wonderful.
Yeah.
So our featured play today is Mox Nox by Patrick Gabridge. And I only today just learned his name is pronounced Gabridge and not Gabridge. You've worked with Patrick many times in the past,
Yes.
directing Blood on the Snow, Cato and Dolly, and the Mount Auburn plays. But Mox Nox is a play that is so new as yet to be performed so far as I know.
Yeah, it's been workshopped a couple of times, but it's not going to have its world premiere until 2020.
So what should the audience know before listening to the excerpt? Or do you think we'll get it all from the excerpt?
I would just encourage the audience to go with it. This is not our world directly, and there are things that happen that are unexplained. And so I would suggest to the audience to just go along for the ride. Don't question too much, and don't try and understand and explain everything. Just enjoy what you're hearing. Mox Nox by Patrick Gabridge. Scene 1, Arrival. The outside of a house with a large deck, which is now actually serving as a dock, because the house is surrounded by water. There is an orange tree in a pot with oranges. There's also a bottle tree, a long-handled net, and a broken windmill. DeeDee and Pike appear in a small rowboat. In addition to DeeDee and Pike, the boat is filled with suitcases. Pike rows. A cloud of flashcards with images on them swirls around DeeDee. She will pick one out, look at it, name it, and then return it to the cloud.
Mira. Mother. Flower. Pike. Me. Cake. Bear. Bird. Fish.
I think we're here.
DeeDee pulls down the cards and pockets them.
Is this it?
Yes.
You sure?
DeeDee digs into her pocket and pulls out a card with an image that matches the house.
Absolutely.
Ahoy!
Ahoy.
Isn't that what you say?
If we were pirates.
Ahoy, mateys! We are come a-sculling across the seven seas to invade your home.
I don't think that's the approach we should take.
Gotcha. Smiles and flowers.
Could be a better strategy.
Not a bad place to grow up.
Pike rows the boat closer to the dock.
Didn't have a waterfront view back then.
Smart of them to build this dock.
DeeDee looks intently at the house and dock as if trying to remember every little detail.
It's just our back deck.
Well, works out great now.
You're little Mr. Sunshine today.
Well, I'm always like this. It's one of the things that you like about me.
Is it?
Absolutely.
Well, keep it up then. What else do I like about you?
My good looks.
I can see that.
I'm good in the sack.
Remind me later.
Oh, I will. And I'm a people person.
Of course you are. You're my people person.
She gives him a kiss.
My bedroom was right up there. Painted yellow. Ugh, was into everything yellow. Yellow flowers, yellow birds. I had my very own feeder for finch golders.
Goldfinches.
We planted sunflowers in the yard right below. So in the summer, the yellow seemed to flow right out of my room and into the world.
Did you have a lemon tree instead of the oranges?
Neither would have grown this far up north, not even in pots.
One upside to our present world situation.
You managed to find the bright side.
Should we try to find your sister?
Suppose we rode all this way.
And there's no going back.
He ties the boat to the dock.
Here we go. Nice and easy, okay?
Ahoy!
Pike!
Amanda enters.
Hello?
A bouquet of flowers suddenly appears in Pike's hand. DeeDee seems confused by Amanda and pokes into her pocket for cards, sneaking a glance but not finding the answer she's looking for.
Hi. These are for you.
Thank you, but who? Wow, it's been...
Oh my God. You're DeeDee. Mira, come here. I can't believe you're here. DeeDee realizes that Amanda is not Mira.
Here we are.
Who are you?
I'm Mira's wife, Amanda. DeeDee, wow. I feel like I already know you. Mira talks so much about you.
Really?
And you are?
DeeDee's fiancé, Pike. We're very happy together.
Yes, we are.
Welcome. This place must bring back memories.
It actually does.
The house seems super stable. The way it's built up high on this spit of land.
Yes, very fortunate spot.
Looks roomy, too.
Mira! She'll be out. Just give her a minute. Have you been rowing long?
Days and days.
It's been a bit of a journey.
Let me help you up.
Mira enters just as Amanda extends her hand to help DeeDee out of the boat.
Stop!
Amanda withdraws her hand. DeeDee and Pike remain in the boat, startled.
Mira.
Ahoy, future sister. Request permission to disembark.
Permission denied. Step away, Amanda.
Mira.
We don't know who these people are or their intentions.
I'm your sister.
Are you sure?
DeeDee puts a hand into the pocket with the cards, but she does not look.
Yes, I am. I remember you.
I suppose I should remember you too, but it's been an awfully long time.
They brought us flowers.
Don't they know we grow our own?
How would they?
Amanda is a florist. That's our greenhouse on the other side of the house.
We love flowers. These are perfect.
We would like to come ashore, sister.
That's quite a load of baggage.
We never know where we'll be next, so things come with us.
And who's this?
Pike. Her fiancé.
Fiancé! Today is just full of surprises.
We're very happy together.
Is he an engineer too?
Oh, nothing as fancy as that. I fix things.
Things?
Houses, gadgets, you name it.
You'd be a handy person to have around.
He is.
I'll bet.
You've made your point. Let us come ashore.
My point? You think I've made my point?
She laughs, which devolves into a huge coughing fit. If she keeled over dead, we wouldn't be surprised. But she doesn't. Amanda gives her some water.
Are you okay?
Perfect.
Look, we're here. We've been rowing for days. We're getting off.
Amanda goes to help. Mira stops her.
No. Once they're off, they'll start making themselves at home.
This is my home.
Was. A long time ago.
Mom left half of it.
You do not get to bring her up.
This place is legally half mine, whether you like it or not.
You can't just show up and
But we have! And we're getting off this boat.
DeeDee climbs up onto the dock.
Jesus Christ. We've been invaded.
Good.
Amanda helps DeeDee as Pike hands up the suitcases to them, plus a large toolbox. One of the suitcases is particularly heavy.
Jeez, what have you gotten here? Rocks?
We brought what we needed. Nothing more.
Okay.
That's all of it.
He hops out onto the dock.
Land ho!
Is he always like this?
Pike is fun. It's one of the things I like about him.
Fun only gets you so far.
I have missed you.
Invaders making wild claims. Interesting.
Let's get you settled. You must be hungry.
I'm starving.
I was just about to make lunch.
Amanda grabs a suitcase and walks to the house. Pike grabs more bags, including the super heavy suitcase, and follows. DeeDee grabs a suitcase but stops and looks hard at Mira.
Mira. Yes. It is good to see you.
DeeDee hurries after the other two and disappears into the house. Mira goes over to the boat and gives a long look. Mira remains on the dock and begins a sequence of yoga poses so graceful and strong that they take our breath away. She experiences a moment of peace, maybe even smiles, and then catches herself and crumples, panting. Pain. A small, hard piece of ash or coal drops off or out of Mira. She does not seem to notice. The water rises. End of scene.
Our featured playwright today is Patrick Gabridge, the most prolific playwright I know. If I started listing his plays and novels, it'd take up the entire podcast. He helped to start the Rhombus Playwrights Writers Group, the Chameleon Stage Theater Company in Denver, the Bare Bones Theater Company in New York, and the publication Market Insight for Playwrights. He started the online playwright submission Binge email list, which I consider the most important thing I learned about in Company One's Play Lab. He's written plays featuring the Boston Massacre, John Adams, Tycho Brahe, Santa, and Beatrix Potter. Welcome to the podcast, the hardest working man in playwriting, Patrick Gabridge.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that introduction.
Now, Mox Nox, I understand you wrote this on a commission from the Brown Box Theater. Can you tell us about how that works and what were the parameters and how it came about?
Yeah, it was kind of an odd situation in that Tyler Toston is the artistic director of Brown Box. So he and they ended up directing a play of mine, Lab Rats, which was a lot of fun to work on, and it felt very successful. I had a great time working with them. It was a two-hander that we did a couple years ago. And Brown Box always tours their work to Maryland and Delaware. So they start the productions here typically, and then they tour it. And I actually got to go on tour. They said, hey, you want to come? I'm like, yeah, I'm pretty good with the screw gun. And so their productions normally just have the actors involved in setting up the set and everything. So it was actually pretty handy to have an extra pair of hands, because normally when they're bringing a Shakespeare production, it's a lot of people. And this time it was a cast of two. So we had to build the whole set and everything. I was like, yeah, I can be helpful. I'll try to be useful. It was a great experience for me and really got to know them super well. So I went back to him a year or so later.
So is Brown Box located in Maryland area? Or
They're here.
Oh, okay.
They're based in Boston, but they also always tour. And their goal is kind of to bring underserved communities free theater a lot of times.
And even being based in Boston, they perform in different locations here in Boston. I mean, they're really a unique theater company in that mode in which they have sort of these two areas that they perform in. But even within those areas, you know, you said you were on tour. When they're in Del Mar Valley, like they're not just at one location and sitting down, they're moving around within that space, and they're doing that up in Boston as well. And I don't know of any other company that has quite that commitment to moving locations and serving so many different audiences on every single title that they do.
Yeah, they're amazing and really underrated, I think, underappreciated in the Boston theater community. I think it's hard to get critics out because they're in unusual spaces.
Right.
So I don't think they get as much press as they should. And they've done some really interesting plays that are bilingual. So they've done shows that are both in Spanish and in English. And they actually have a partner theater in Mexico that they've actually toured down there, and I don't know anybody in town that's gone all the way down there.
Wow.
So they're pretty neat. But I went to Kyler and I said, hey, Kyler, I think you should commission me to do a new play. And he said, okay, what do you want to write about? And I said, well, for years, I've been wanting to do a play that involves magic. Really interested in stage magic, the psychology of it and the way it works, and really about the theatricality of it and the intense theatricality of it and how it gets into the audience's heads much more intentionally than our traditional theater does. So he said, sure, yeah, that sounds great. And so it was really an interesting process in that, we kind of talked about some of the things that interested us subject matter-wise, and then we identified actors that we thought we'd like to work with on this piece. We knew it'd be 4 actors. We knew it'd be probably no intermission and it had to be tourable. But we also wanted it to use magic in the magical realist sense, and that we didn't want it to be about magic where people are making spells or doing magic tricks per se, but that
being
the magic
con men or something.
Right,
like that.
exactly. Not about that, but that it's a part of this world. And Kyler and I are both very interested in theatrical work that has a certain sense of theatricality and surprise. That I think both of us sometimes feel like a lot of what we see on stage is kind of dull. It doesn't have a sense of inherent interest for the audience and doesn't give them this sense of wonder or surprise.
It is really lovely, even in just the one scene that we read, where things that are not of this world, that are magical, just happen. And they're not commented on. They're not reflected. It's just understood that this is a part of this world. And I agree. I think that's something that we don't see enough on stage. We're so used to seeing it in film. We're so used to, even at this point, seeing it on a lot of television. But we don't see it as much on stage in quite the same way. We usually tend to, I think, explain more why this is happening or how this is happening, as opposed to just letting it be of this world.
Yeah, I think you can see in playwrights like Jose Rivera with plays like Cloud Tectonics or Marisol or some other people in that vein. But this is just a different take on it. And what was cool is we identify actors, and then so I started talking to them and interviewing them early on to kind of get to know them. I like getting to write for specific actors, and so the characters are developing based on things that I know that they can do. I ask them about what their specific talents are, about their family background, about fears that they might have, and so all of that kind of blended together as I'm developing these characters. So it gave an ability to make kind of some interesting depth for character development far ahead of time. And then we've been workshopping it. And one thing we were trying to do is take advantage of the nimbleness of working with a small theater company. In that a lot of times what we're seeing in the fringe scene around Boston, and it happens in other cities too, is that small companies want to be like big companies. They're like, let's do a season, just like everybody else. And it takes them, because they have fewer resources, it takes them all their energy to just put on a show. And they're doing shows that aren't that much different from what the larger venues can do. And that's frustrating to me in that they're not pushing the boundaries. They're not pushing the boundaries of what kind of work they can create, and they're not taking advantage of the nimbleness they should have. So we said, let's make this a long process. Let's develop this over the course of a year. We're going to bring in a magician and consult with us. So we're teaching the actors sleight of hand. We want a long commitment from them. So much more like the process in Europe or some of the Polish theater that had come about in the 1970s and 60s. So it's a different way of working than I think most small theaters are working in Boston, and it is using the advantage of that they're small. The hard thing is it's a very ambitious piece theatrically, so they are committed to finding more resources, and they have them, and working with maybe a little more experienced designers than they might normally have at this level of theater, because we know we want to build a world that really has this, and we need people who can build and make this world into something that's really cool, and it still has to be tourable.
Yeah, it's interesting to think about the tourability, given the set seems pretty important, that you need a house that is floating in some way or another, and just to have a small, people have to lug that thing around and set it up every time.
Yeah, well, Kyler's originally he was like, we have to use real water.
Oh my God.
Okay.
The structural engineering for that would be.
But I think the idea is actually that as the water rises, we're really seeing as the set descending into it. So, but yeah, it's going to be really cool, and I think I like being involved in the project that feels like this could easily be a huge disaster, or it's going to be something that is amazingly cool, like something you don't normally see. And I feel like, to me, that's where theaters on the fringe should be operating. That I wish we saw more disasters and more grand experiments.
Because it's disastrous because you're reaching so high,
Yeah.
right? And I mean, you're right. You're absolutely right that is a risk that a fringe theater can take and can make, and that is where it should be happening.
I think there was...
As should our educational theaters. I feel strongly about that.
I do too. I think MFA programs and bachelor's programs, it's great that you can teach people like, yeah, great, you made a solid play, or congratulations, you did a production, but this is your time to do something great and have it be horrible.
Yeah.
Or have it just be something like people will talk about this for years to come. There was a theater company here run by Meg, who now is up in Maine.
Yes.
What's the name of that theater company?
Oh no, Meg, don't kill us. Wait, I know it. Oh.
Should I Google it?
Oh shoot, Meg Tainter's company, right?
Hang on,
they were a company that was doing that.
They really were,
right?
And
I
since
think you're still seeing that. Like Theater on Fire sometimes does some stuff. Like they did Clown Bar and a few other things that they do. So anyway, I'm interested in that kind of work when I came.
It's interesting to think that this starting point was magic. At what point did the post-apocalyptic element come in?
I just have to add it was Whistler in the
Whistler
Dark.
in the Dark. Thank you. Yeah, Whistler in the Dark. Early on in that, I think global warming is a really, really big issue that we have to address. And it was pretty early that I just kind of knew this was going to be in a world of rising water. And I can't remember if it was something Kyler's like, oh, that'd be really cool, or I wanted to do. But this sense of of the world in this other place. And I really had a vision for this house that seemed really strong in my head about these people. And it's this world where the characters, we can talk about a little bit for this play, they have these intense opposite needs, right? So there's two sisters, and one cannot forget the slights that she's had during her childhood and holds those so dear to her that she is literally burning from the inside out, and thus is shedding ashes and coals around the stage until something really terrible happens at the end of this play. Her other sister, DeeDee, shows up from out of town, and she is quickly losing her memory. And so she can't remember everything. There's one sister who can remember everything and needs to forget it, and the other sister who can't remember anything and needs to remember something. So they're at exact opposites for what they need. Is which you
one's
want
deteriorating mentally, one's deteriorating physically.
Exactly. And then you have these two trailing spouses who are kind of left trying to understand the wreckage of this family amidst people who are coping with the wreckage of this world that's around them. And it feels, we say post-apocalyptic, but it, to me, feels very present. We're not that far in the future in some ways from what we're seeing. I mean, Miami floods during the day on non-rain days and non-flood days all the time.
It feels terrifyingly close.
It is not too many steps removed from where we are today. That's good, but it's also not an issue play. Like, it's this world, but I'm not. The goal is not for it to be a play that's about politics of global warming. But I think it's important that we see works on our stages now that are engaged with the moment in that way. Yeah. So that's what theater needs to be doing, is always engaging in moments in the present without necessarily having to beat people over the head about it. And that's what race is also a factor in this play, but partly because of the casting and partly of some small things in the play. This is a multiracial family. There are two sisters, one is black and one is white, but it's not explained. We don't get into adoption. It's just the audience sees that they're different. There's some differences highlighted in the script in very small ways. That's the goal.
Yeah, I don't think we mentioned that in the reading, that DeeDee is black.
Is black or multiracial, right. But, and that's something that I'm interested in as a playwright in a lot of my work, is race and multiracial families, especially. I have a multiracial family, and so I'm really interested in seeing families that look like mine on stage, and they're often very, very hard to find. So like any playwright, we write what we want to see on stage. We write what we think is important to see on stage. And for me, I want to work in a multiracial, diverse environment, and I, as a playwright, have the ability to influence that by writing multiracial casts.
And in the same way as you were talking about that it is an issue play, but not an issue play dealing with global warming and things, it's also a racial play, but not, it's in that same way where it of course brings up these ideas, but it's not the main focus at the heart of it. This is still a piece about a family
drama.
And like you said, the dangers of both letting go too quickly and not letting go quickly enough.
Yeah, for me it's a play about, at the heart, it's a play about siblings.
Yeah.
And how and how complicated families are, and that there's not always reasons for the things that burn us up inside, right? Families are so tightly glued together that we can't always explain why we don't connect or we do connect or why we have such friction, but it impacts us in huge ways.
Well, I mean, I love, and I don't want to give it away, but you know, Mira has been hanging on to an event from their childhood.
Right.
That is really literally and emotionally burning her up inside all these years later. And I think that we all have that, you know, I mean, we all have those touchstone moments that the other person is like, I don't even remember that. And you're like, I built my entire existence around this.
And with the world literally falling apart, this is still the issue she chooses to litigate.
Yeah.
And I think that is true. And I think it's so true, even if you look in a broader political sense of how our world operates, is that we're in a world of rising water, and we're still playing out petty fights between party and political, you know, resentments and things like that. So in the larger scale, it's that shrunk down to a 4-person play.
So I know that you, like you said, it was commissioned and magic was always going to be a part of it. And you're working with Evan Northrup.
Who is amazing.
How did you find him? Like, how did that connection come about?
First, who is Evan Northrup?
So Evan Northrup is a magician who lives in the Boston area and also consults with a lot of theaters and doing stage magic. So there might be a magical effect. He's worked at the Huntington. He's worked at the Lyric. He's worked with Flat Earth. There's a whole bunch of people. And I think I just asked around. I was asking around because Kyler and I were like, we need to work with a magician to make this happen. Because I think we want an intimate environment. We want magic to happen. And I knew I needed someone to talk to kind of understand how magic works in a really interesting way to me. And that's like how audiences' attentions are focused in a really conscious and intentional way. And that's how it works. And I'm super interested in that. And Courtney and I were talking earlier about how I think that sorry, I won't speak for you. I think that all theater students should actually take a semester of magic because it makes you think really hard about where audiences look and how you train them to do think what you want them to think. And that's our job as playwrights and performers and directors. We're doing magic all the time, but we're not always as intentional about it as magicians are. But anyway, so Northrup is this guy we brought in. Evan is just the most fun guy to have in rehearsal. He always has a trick for us at the start of every rehearsal and just blows our minds and just freaks everybody out. And it's so much fun. And so he's been an integral part of this. And we knew that the design and theatricality of this thing was really important. So already early on, we are bringing in designers into the workshops that when we knew the production was 6 months or a year away. Normally, that's not at all the way the process works, where you're bringing in the designers. They might be contracted ahead of time, but they're often working in isolation from the rest of the team. There might be a meeting, then everyone goes off and does their thing, and they bring back the drawings. We had our lighting designer, Karen Perlow, who's a terrific lighting designer. We had her there at the workshop, so she could see the stuff, and we're talking to people ahead of time. And so we were workshopping this thing a couple different times. It'll end up being produced in early 2020 right now.
Have you rewritten parts of the magic with sort of his ideas in mind? You know what I mean? Like, which came first, the magician or the magic? Like, have you adjusted the magic to fit the magician, or has he sort of opened things up for you? How does that relationship
I think they both influenced each other. So like I had things I was trying to do, but then as I would talk to Evan, I'm like, oh, we can do this kind of thing and this kind of thing. And so there was definitely a draft after an initial early workshop and working with Evan where I was like, oh, I could do these things. So like the flashcards at the beginning of the play, those definitely developed over the process. And they're a cool device because I understand how they can work. And Evan's like, yeah, we can definitely do this. So, for example, so that she's got these cards that she's using as a mnemonic device, and then as she
to remind her of basic everyday
things. So, like a fish, or her mother, or this house,
or
herself. And then when she forgets one, the card goes blank, and it's an effect that we can do very effectively on stage, pretty easily, and it's powerful. And we just saw it in a reading, and you're like, oh man, it's unsettling.
I still want to ask you how you do that, and yet I don't want to know at the same time,
right?
I know.
It's
that push and pull. It's like, tell me, no, don't tell me.
He would have to kill you.
Yeah, and it's fun. But we definitely worked with the actors. So we had a whole workshop where we Kyler and I would take half the actors off and work on script stuff for a scene at a time, and the other 2 actors we would go off and work with Evan learning magic tricks for a whole week. We did this.
That's so cool.
And then we did the reading at the end, just for an invited audience. They had learned tricks enough to do as part of the reading.
Cool.
That's pretty neat.
Before moving on from this play, we should say when it's taking place if people are interested. They can see.
So, yeah, I don't know.
Or where to go to find out.
So,
There we go.
Yeah, Brown Box Theater Project is the place to go to check out about it. And right now it looks like it will appear in Boston in early 2020. So late spring, I think. So it'll be here for a couple weeks. They used to perform at Atlantic Wharf a lot. This will probably be in a theater because the set demands are really tricky. And then after that, I'll go on tour. So it'll definitely go on tour to Delmarva, maybe even a stop or 2 around New England. We just kind of have to see how it works out. The added time, we were originally going to do it in 2019, but getting all the pieces together wasn't happening. And so I appreciate Kyler's willingness to say, hey, we're all excited, but let's make sure this is what we want it to be. Give them a chance to be great.
And Delmarva means Delaware, Maryland, and Virginia?
Yes, exactly. Yep. So Kyler is from Ocean City. So that's kind of their home base when they're down in that area.
So let's talk about your career as a whole. Your body of work is incredibly eclectic. We have history, we have musicals, we have sci-fi. Is there anything you won't or don't write about?
What a great question.
I don't think so. I think I'm interested in trying everything. Now that I've done, I'm meeting with somebody to talk about doing another musical next week. So you never know. No, I have a broad variety of interests for sure.
And it sounds like you can also get yourself motivated to be interested in something you previously weren't if the project is interesting.
Yeah, if the project is right, and I read a lot of different things, and so in terms of history, I've covered many, many different topics, which I'm really interested in. And then there's contemporary issues around politics, and I've written satire. There's things I'd like to write more of. Like, I'd love to write a great 4-person comedy that no one can resist producing all around the world. That would be awesome. Or maybe a 2-hander.
For many reasons.
For lots of reasons.
And I'd like to produce that thing.
Yeah, that'd be great. Like, sometimes I wish my work was a little more commercial, but I'm learning that my work is what it is, and so that's okay. And I'm interested in new things. Like, it'd probably be smarter of me if I wrote, the same thing all the time with slight variations so that people would say, oh, I love this play, let's go see the next one. But instead it's like, yeah, I did this play called Constant State of Panic that's kind of this crazy piece about people's madness and paranoia in the world. And then, a commissioned musical about a children's book, So it probably doesn't help me. It helps me stay sane and interested in the world, though.
You were saying you just came off of the 1 year run of being incredibly busy with one thing after another. You just want to go over that blow by blow?
Seriously, the busiest and hardest working playwright I know. It's amazing.
It's funny. You ask at a good time because I literally just had a party last night where I invited all the people in Boston that I had worked with over the last year, and all the actors and directors and a few other people, and we invited 97 people. So that's how many actors and directors and such that I worked with in Boston last year. So it was a lot. There are lots of little short plays. I had a piece in the 1 Minute Play Festival. And then I had a play called None But the Best that was remounted by a company called In Good Company. And it's a play with music about 19th century Boston philanthropist Daniel Sharp Ford, which no one's ever heard of. But it's kind of a play with historic music that looks at the latter half of the 19th century and kind of this guy who was really influential in American culture and history that no one ever heard of. He published this weekly news magazine called The Youth's Companion, which was kind of this wholesome thing.
Oh, yeah.
If you've ever read Laura Ingalls Wilder, so
she used to love reading that.
So that was a real thing in the 1800s, and by the time he died in 1899, it reached 500,000 people across the United States. It was responsible for the Pledge of Allegiance, for Columbus Day. They were genius marketers. They had this system of subscriptions where you could get your friends to buy subscriptions. You could get these little prizes and things like that. But they would be things like the works of Shakespeare, or a microscope, or a razor, or all these different things. Wow. They have a catalog that they put out every year. And so they're way, way ahead of influencing people. And the whole Pledge of Allegiance thing was to get kids involved with their schools. And Ford was a Christian democratic socialist, of all things. I understand that, and the Pledge of Allegiance under God was definitely not there, interestingly enough. So he was just has fingers in everything, and his footprints are all around Boston. So instead of building mansions in Newport, he helped found Boston Baptist Hospital, which was now New England Baptist Hospital. He built a building to house this huge operation that he did, which was called the Youth Companion Building. If you know where Club Cafe in Boston is, right down the street from the Lyric, that building was built to house the Youth Companion.
Wow!
He's all over the place. If you've ever heard of the Ford Hall Forum, which is a big free speech forum that's held every year. It used to be held up on Beacon Hill. It's been going for years. That was a bequest, something that he did. But anyway, so we did this play about him 5 years ago, and then we remounted it with some new music and rewritten. So that was just one project. And then was workshopping Mox Nox over the summer. Courtney and I worked on this play at the Old State House called Cato and Dolly, which was a site-specific play commissioned by the Old State House that ran all summer. We ran 112 performances. We saw about 2,800 people come through as part of the museum experience. That was a 23-minute piece about unheard voices in American history from the John Hancock household. So that was really fun. And then we worked on a piece called Band Together just recently in September that was a censorship cabaret put on by the Dramatists Legal Defense Fund that happened in 15 cities across the country. So I was the Boston person behind that. And then Courtney and I are also working on a series of plays at Mount Auburn Cemetery. I'm the artist in residence there over the next 2 years. And so we're developing 2 series of 5 one-act plays that will be produced in a site-specific way. One will be produced next June, one will be produced next September. And so I was also writing those plays. There are 6 out of 10 are written now, which is good. So I have to get working really fast.
Yes, please do.
Yes, I'm working as fast as I can on that. I was also in Korea for a production of mine.
Yeah, I was going to say, these are just sort of you've just been talking about the new projects
Right,
that were going on, but then
things.
you've had things being produced all around the world.
That is true. I did do a lot of traveling this year for other things. and I have a new book that comes out next week. So that's exciting, new kids book. Yeah, I've been busy.
You have been busy. So a lot of site-specific stuff, a lot of commissions, a lot of, I don't know who's pitching who, but you're definitely finding them and getting them.
With the site-specific work, it is kind of interesting how that kind of work feeds in itself. And now I have a whole new theater company called Plays in Place that specializes in creating site-specific plays in partnership with museums and historic sites. Using the team that Courtney and I had on Blood on the Snow at the Old State House, and then some of the other people I've worked with over time. So Cato and Dolly was our first official project, and then Mount Auburn Cemetery is one that we'll be producing. And then I'm in touch with other museums now. The nice thing is when you have work that, like what we've done, it's been really successful in terms of audience appeal, and the co-sponsors that we're working with have been very pleased with how those have turned out. And critical response too is always nice. Those people come to us and say, hey, we want to do another one, or this would be great, and let's talk. And so, and especially when we had a show that, like Cato and Dolly, that ran for 3 months, 3 days a week, 3 times a day, people can come see that. And other museums so Old State House is bringing in people all the time and say, hey, look what we're doing. This is kind of cool. And so the word starts to get out. But I will have to beat the bushes a little bit. But we'll see. You can only do so much at a time, I'm told.
You tend to defy that. But, yeah.
No, I can only do so much at once. But
maybe you can be like a Renaissance painter, and you have these anonymous assistants that work under you in honest mystery.
Well, it is certainly possible, actually, that Place in Place will get to. I think it's very likely they'll get to a place where Courtney can't direct everything that we do because she has a job now. So I know we've got her from Mount Auburn, but if we picked up 2 or 3 other gigs, we have to work with. But I have other people that I've worked with. So like Rebecca Bradshaw at the Huntington is someone that she and I worked on a piece at the MIT Museum about quantum entanglement. And she and I worked together a number of times. And we actually, all 3 of us worked together on Blood on the Snow. So I know lots of people I can work with. And it may be, I would like to write them all. But if I can't write them all, I certainly have playwright friends in Boston who I really like their writing that I can say, hey, can you do this?
Because I think even the first time we did Blood on the Snow was sort of the first kind of partnership like this that I was aware of between the museum and the theater world on that scale.
Yeah.
That we were doing. I mean,
it's happening around town, but not that big.
Right. The first year that we did Blood on the Snow, we were going to run for 3 weeks. We sold out before we even were close to opening. So we added a 4th week. And then it came back the next summer and ran sold out for 12 weeks. So not only were we opening the doors to work for a playwright, work for a director, but we had designers involved. We had 10 actors the first summer, and the second summer, between replacement actors and understudies, I mean, we opened a door for employment to probably about 15, 16 actors. Right. And so I think you're right. Hopefully at some point, Plays in Place will become bigger. The goal or the dream is for it to become bigger than enough work for one person. Mm-hmm. And to have to bring other people in, which would be amazing, and giving people sustaining work.
And I think what's exciting about it is that it's tapping into resources for the theater community that it didn't have before, in that we're opening a different door to funding, so that when I'm doing a show with Plays in Place, it's not cannibalizing funding that could be going to the Lyric or Central Square or something like that. These are different funders. Sometimes if you start a new theater company in town and you're like, I'm competing with everybody else, there's only so many actors, so many roles to go around, and so much money. This is different. This is additional work. This is additional funding, adding to giving work for actors, giving new money into the artistic system that we have, which is really, I find super exciting. I like writing those paychecks.
So thinking of any early career playwrights who might be listening now, they're probably seethingly jealous of the work you're getting. and they'll want to know, how do you get to where you're at? So what is the, let's say,
what's the secret?
If you have one thing or two things, you tell them that they should be doing that they probably aren't?
Oh, okay. The secret is do it for 30 years and get a little lucky. Right. I've been doing this a long time. My first play was produced in 1987 when I was still in college. So part of it just is longevity. I mean, and actually that's the thing that writers need to understand the most when they're getting started, is that it is a long game. You will run into friends that will have a burst of success, and we can all be jealous of them. I certainly am. It's great when that happens. But in the end, what we're doing is a real long game. So to not panic when you're young and it feels like I'm never getting my work produced, why isn't it happening for me? It takes a long time. It takes a long time for any of these projects to happen. I mean, even Mox Nox, which is a commission, we started talking in April of 2017. It's going to appear in April of 2020. And that's short. And so Blood on the Snow, we started talking to them I started talking to them because Courtney wasn't on board yet. I started talking to them at the end of 2013. It was produced in 2016 and 2017. It'll come back again in 2020. But, that is not super long. And also understand that you build a body of work over time, so which allows you to gain more traction and you get better at it. I mean, the hard thing about starting out is that you're really not very good. And you have to be blind to that and do it anyway and get those productions and keep plugging ahead and not realize it. You can't know how bad you are when you're starting, because then you would quit. You'd say, oh, wow, this really isn't very good and I don't know how to be better, because it takes time. It takes time to get good at this. I am experienced, and I've written a lot of plays and I've produced a lot of plays, and I spend a lot of time going to plays. I'm really interested in the process. I'm really interested in audiences. I pay really close attention whenever I go see a show. I want to know how it's working or how it's not working, not just the text, but the production. But it's a long education, and you don't get it from an MFA, and you don't get it from your BA or all that stuff. That's my opinion. I mean, not everyone's going to agree with me, but I definitely feel like you have to be patient with yourself. You have to forgive yourself and do more and keep doing it. And if you love it enough to not be able to shed it, I've wanted to quit many times. And I've gone off and written novels or written more movies and things like that. But I, keep coming back to this. And I know this is what I really love. And I'm very lucky to get to do it. That's the long answer.
It's a great answer.
I think that would be helpful to a lot of people.
Yeah, it's good. I mean, there's practical things, too, that people need to know how to do. And it's a two-pronged thing, right? You have to send your work out. You can't be shy about sending your work out. And so, like Playwright Submission Binge, which you mentioned before, that's an organization that I started 15 years ago as a way just to make...
And it's basically an email list where people crowdsource their playwriting opportunities.
It is. What's cool about it is it's actually a little more than that, in that that's part of the functionality of it. But what it's turned into is this online community that focuses on marketing for playwrights. So we take the challenge twice a year of sending out a play every day for 30 days. and you report back to the group and you say, this is what I sent and why. This is important. Why and where. And the generosity of that group has turned it into this place where you can just gather information all you want. There's 1,100 members from around the world.
Wow.
Most of them are just lurking, but there's an active between 50 and 70 people at any time who are posting and doing stuff, especially in March and September when we have these binges. But it's cool in that there's a fellowship that exists there, which is really powerful, and relationships form there between other writers that you can respect. And there's a mix of knowledge levels there. So a new person can go there and ask some questions about the market and how do I operate in this world, which I think is warmly welcomed and supported in this group. And it shares a ton of information. So it's super useful. And so one thing you learn is that if you only submit 4 plays a year, let's say a good acceptance rate for someone who's a pretty good writer is, say, 10%. Like my average acceptance rate for everything, that's because like short plays get accepted a lot more easily than long plays. So like full length plays, my acceptance rate probably runs around a 5%, where short plays it could be 10 to 18%.
And sometimes acceptance means like, hey, you're a semifinalist.
Could be, yeah. It depends on. We all have our different levels for what acceptance means. I wouldn't count semifinalists, but I might count finalists.
Okay.
So, and I'm like a numbers geek, so I keep extensive records and data over the past since 1990. So I have a pretty extensive database of thousands of submissions that I track pretty carefully. But say you're 10% submission. So if you want one production and you only sent out 4 submissions this year, then you're probably not going to get produced.
Yeah.
So let's say you got to send out 10 for every one that you get. So if you want to have a thriving career, even if you're writing small plays, you should send out a lot. I send out 140 to 160 a year. I know some people send out 400 or 500. That's, for me, I don't have the time to do that, and it wouldn't be helpful to me. But that's what it takes. So that's part of it. And the other part of it is to be successful as a playwright. I feel strongly you need to be part of the theater community where you're at. So start local and then work your way national. So if you're not going to plays and getting to know who's doing them and finding out who you like and talking to those people, if you're not doing that, your chances of success are small because it's a people business. Sure, there are submission opportunities that you're just sending out there to 400 or 500 people, and you might get one, which is great, and that works great, and it says a lot about your script. But that's not going to build you a career. That's going to build you some opportunities. Mm-hmm. What builds you a career is being part of the community, because people produce plays by people they know, and people they like to work with. So you have to be someone people like to work with, and you need to be indispensable. So you need to be someone that someone can go to and say, hey, I'm looking to a reading. Do you know any actors who are women in their late 40s who might be interested in doing this? And you should say, yeah, I have a list in my head of people that I've worked with. Call this person. I think if you're that person, then you're part of people's conversation. A long answer, but it's so important. People neglect. They're always thinking for their career, like, what do I do next for me?
Right.
And it's so important. Just like this podcast this is like the perfect example of a thing to do to get good at being a playwright, because you are interviewing people who are interesting. So you're learning about what they do. You're making contacts with them. Mm-hmm. You're involved with actors. It's like the smartest thing. So obviously your listeners can't go do that because you already did it.
I don't.
But they should continue.
I don't claim ownership over the idea of podcasting.
No, you're not. But I think what you're doing is really smart, and but it's not something that you're just doing for yourself. It's useful for the community. But the people have to understand that when you boost the community or you work on the ecosystem for where you live, that the new play ecosystem, it helps you while helping everybody else. You have to think that way if you want to be successful.
But then you have to live that, and you do that. I think a lot of people perhaps believe that they live that way without actually walking the walk. And you truly do. You've worked in so many different aspects of the playwriting and the theater community at large, through starting Rhombus, working with Rhombus, through the new play newsletter that comes out, through the publication of the books. I mean, there's been so many different pieces that you are actively involved in, and being a good community member in them, that you're not always just in there as the playwright promoting yourself and your work, but you are equally promoting others and this community as a whole. And that is something that I think is really invaluable.
Oh, I think that's so important. If you want people to listen to you, you can't talk about yourself and your own work all the time. You have to know who the other people are and be able to say, hey, look, my friend has this play. And it's simple. Like now it's nice because we have the online capability to, it's simple. Like it's the simple networking things that people should do that they don't think of. Like if you go see your friend's play, you should post on Facebook and or Twitter, whatever is your social medium of choice. And if you don't have one, you should get one. You should, post, say, oh, I'm so excited to see this person's new play. And that's all you have to do. It's helpful for them because it gets them more exposure. It's helpful for you because now your friend and their director and the producer all know you went to go see it and they appreciate that. Mm-hmm. And that's something, like I notice, believe me, I notice when anyone goes to see my play and posts about it, I know. And so do all your friends. They all know. And if you don't like it, you don't have to say anything else.
Right.
You just say, I'm excited to be here. And then if you don't like it, you don't tell anybody. You tell your friend in an email, but you don't put it online. Right. And then if it's great, you tell everybody.
Right.
And you make it, that's your mission for that day, is to say, I want to tell everybody I know, go see this play. Go see Magic Show by Evan Northrup.
Yeah.
Because that's how it works.
You are the Northeast rep for Dramatists Guild?
I am the New England regional rep for, it's just about to change. It was Northern and Southern New England, and we're actually going to change it to be East and West, which, because I was covering everything but Connecticut, which is kind of a lot. So I'm going to, and I just started a year ago, less than a year ago. So I'm going to be doing basically everything east of Worcester, I think, pretty much. So I have Maine and New Hampshire, Rhode Island, and Eastern Massachusetts. So not too much.
Okay.
Just a couple small states.
Just a few spots.
So how about we just explain what Dramatists Guild offers for playwrights?
Sure. So the Dramatists Guild is the national organization supporting playwrights. It's not a union. It's a trade association. There are some differences. But what it means is it supports all playwrights. And it offers a great magazine. It offers a lot of contract advice, legal advice. It's a fierce advocate for playwrights nationally and internationally. There's also different kinds of programs that they offer. So there's workshops and things like that. And then each region has its own thing. So like we, I think, ran 6 or 7 projects this year where it could be simple as meet and greets. We did a contract workshop earlier this year in partnership with the New England New Play Alliance. It was really cool. It was actually a contracts workshop that focused on small theater companies. And so we brought in small theaters and playwrights together because we want to train small theaters to work with better contracts. And we're like, instead of treating them as our adversary, let's bring them in the room and say, this is what a contract with a playwright looks like. And this is what the elements that it should have. And just have them be our partners right away from the beginning. So and there are conferences and it offers all kinds of great things. And it's not a very expensive membership. It's $100 plus a year. Basically, playwrights should belong. And so the people like me, the regional reps, are working on putting out programs regionally and then also reporting back to the national level.
If you're a volume submitter of works, you'll find enough submission free for Dramatists Guild members throughout the course of the year that'll pay for itself on its own.
Right, and they have a resource directory which is updated at least every year, and it's online, so you can use that. So there's all kinds of good stuff. So yeah, the Dramatists Guild is an amazing organization.
How did you get involved with them?
I've been a member for many, many years. I don't know how long. I can't remember how long.
When the music stopped, you were the only one without a seat?
Kind of like that. No, they our previous rep stepped down. She had been there for a few years and had other things to do. So there was an election, and so I won the election. So I get to do that stuff. But it meshes really well with the stuff that I do. I was just at the national conference in July. It was really great to get to see people who I've known online.
And that was in New York, right?
That was in New York, yeah. And so there in the future, there'll be some mini conferences. So I'm hoping that there will be one in Boston when I have the time to organize it. But like the cool thing, like the magazine, there's gonna be a special issue in the spring, probably around when this podcast comes out, that has a focus on Massachusetts. Because I've been pushing for that for a long time, and they said, yeah, let's do it. So there'll be articles around here. Because part of the thing that I'm in my other hat, running the New England New Play Alliance, one of the big goals there is that group has 3 main missions, and it's to increase the number of new plays in New England, increase audiences for new plays in England and then spread the word outside of New England about our playwrights. And because right now it feels like there's a lot of pipeline issues where new work is coming in to our area, but our new work doesn't travel out nearly as much as we would like. And because I think Boston is much more of a new play hub, pound for pound, we'll say, than other places realize. We're a small city, we're fifth the size of Chicago, but we do a lot of new work. And not everyone realizes that, certainly not nationally, and even locally. There's this kind of hometown reticence or suspicion that we really don't do much new work, that there's not much that gets done here. And yet the evidence is against that all the time, but people just can't believe it. They can't say, oh, well, they don't see the Huntington Playwrights program. They don't think about Speakeasy's got the Boston Plays, or that Flat Earth Theater just did a partnership with the Science Museum, or that Company One has its play lab.
Right.
It goes on and on. I mean, there's lots of opportunities here. MFA just had MJ Halberstadt in to do a little site-specific play. They had Obehi here a couple weeks ago doing a thing. So there's a lot going on here, but somehow we can't get our heads around it to say, oh, right, there's that. Stoneham has a new play program now.
Right.
Not Stoneham, Greater Boston Station.
Right. I mean, part of the sort of underlying mission of the podcast is that I think that there's a lot of playwriting talent in Boston, so much so that my list of people to have on the podcast is like 70 names long and could easily be longer.
We have a ridiculous amount of playwriting talent here.
And yet, I think it's sort of systemically underutilized by Boston.
Well, here's the thing. We have this conversation a lot. We all want mid-sized theaters to do more local playwrights, right? They're in a difficult position, they feel. And we could argue this. We won't.
We're probably a lot closer
right,
than we
you and I are
think,
closer. But so there's a pressure amongst mid-sized equity companies to keep the doors open, and they have to sell tickets. And there's big debates within the theater community over how much a new work versus a more established work can sell tickets. And some people would say that's settled data. I would say it's not. But anyway, that's their question. And there's certainly room, I think, for another mid-sized company that focuses exclusively on new works. We have Boston Playwrights Theater already.
Fresh Ink.
Fresh Ink is a small company that does all new work. I think in the French scene, there's a lot happening there. And at the large scene, ART is doing all new work, but tends not to be by local writers. The Huntington is doing a fair bit of new work. And sometimes Melinda, I could list, there's probably half a dozen local playwrights who've been produced. That's a pretty large theater company that's getting work. And now MRT, Merrimack Rep, is doing a lot of new work, and they're doing a lot by Lila Rose Kaplan, who's a local writer. It is happening.
I think part of what we need to figure out how to do, in my opinion, is that the work that's being done on the fringe level, the new work that's being done on the smaller or the fringe level, has to be exported. That what's happening is we're seeing a lot of great new work being done, and what we have to figure out is, now, how do we get it to go to the next step beyond that production or that? I mean, I think Fresh Ink is a great example of that, and the Lyric Stage is partnering with Fresh Ink and trying to explore different ways to have these exchanges and these conversations on the mid-size level of, okay, they're able to do a great production on their scale, and then how do we move that up to the mid-size and then hopefully beyond? How do we start those conversations that haven't made it to the mid-size theaters? I mean, and I think all of the mid-size theaters need to be asking themselves this question, no matter what playwriting support program they might have. It is about how do we now move that forward to get that recognized on the national level and to have other people looking at Boston for new plays that are being developed here.
And I think there are some inroads happening in that. I think now Company One has come on as part of the National New Play Network, which is really great because New Rep was our sole kind of representative for that, but they've kind of scaled back their new play development and production for a little while.
And so they just have a leadership
change.
Big
leadership change. So we don't know what will happen with that. But the question I want to know is, can we have other NNPN members appear? Like, one question I have is, I think Central Square is the right kind of company. If they are doing new work, it just kind of depends. So if they become slightly more consistent, they would be eligible. Is Merrimack Rep someone that could be that for us. Because I think as a community, we need that national exportation. And so NNPN is an obvious way that it exists. And NNPN theaters tend to be closed off. If you're not in that region, almost all of those are closed. So they have many, many theaters that are doing new work. But if I'm looking at an NNPN theater in, Texas, I can't submit to them to get into that national network. So we need regional companies to be serving as kind of our pool out. But I think there also needs to be other venues outside of that. Right. So I think can Lyric partner with somebody and do stuff? Northern Stage is actually interesting. So they're in Vermont. They're doing 2 new plays right now. They have a 6-play workshop series that they're doing in January. They just brought Jack Neary's play, Trick or Treat, off Broadway. They have a real interesting connection there. And I think we need to look out towards Western Massachusetts. If you look at the Berkshires and what those guys are doing, they have that pipeline happening. So, and that can get stuff into the national scene. How do we have Boston be smart in the same way that they are?
Let me quickly recap what NNPN is.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
It's a National New Play Network. It's a group of theaters across the country that do new work, and they often have a play debut in one and then have a rolling world premiere in other venues.
Right, so they have a rolling world premiere program that has to be at least 3 companies, and they're separate productions in different companies, and there's certain requirements that happen, but there's some funding that comes with that if those companies commit to doing that. And so, so National New Play Network is a pretty large organization at this point, and they have full-time staff, and they do a lot. And they help sponsor the New Play Exchange, which is an online database of new work. So they're doing a lot of things. And so how do we get Boston to that national conversation is really important.
One thing I hope that happens to people who listen to this podcast will actually look into working with the featured playwright. And with that in mind, and given all the different phone calls you've already fielded and sent, what is the phone call you'd most like to get from someone listening to this podcast?
Oh, gosh. It's like...
MacArthur Genius Award phone call.
Great. I think that's not going to happen. It's weird because I love this question, and I've been thinking about this question and trying not to be too greedy. Because I have 2 things.
It's fantasy. It can be greedy.
It's fantasy. Because I feel like I am in a really interesting spot with my career right now where I feel very, very fortunate in that I'm getting to do the kind of work I really like to make. And I'm reaching audiences all the time, which I love. It makes me so happy. At the same time, I would still really love for a big national theater company to call me up tomorrow and say, we'd like to do your play Drift. That would make me really happy. So if the Huntington wants to do that, they already know the play quite well. But if anybody wanted that, I think that's the thing I would like to try. But the funny thing is, I'm not sure. I think it would be great. It'd be exciting for the career for me to have a sense of being part of the national conversation with my work. A lot of stuff I do is involved nationally, but I like my work to reach that level. So that's the call I would like to have. At the same time, I don't think it would actually make me happier because I think it took me a long time to get to the point where I realized I work with people I really love working with a lot, and I reach audiences here that I understand and learn from all the time. And I think that's about all I can ask for. And I get paid to do it sometimes. Most of the time.
All right. So if people want to contact you, the best way would be to...
They should go to my website, to www.gabridge.com, and there's lots of information about all my plays there, and they can reach me through that website or by email. Yeah, and keep up to date on what's going on, because we've got plays coming up at Maud Auburn in June and September of 2019, and there'll be definitely plays elsewhere happening in Boston and around the world that I don't know about yet.
And then Mox Nox in 2020.
Mox Nox in 2020, and hopefully some other shows in 2022.
And don't forget Lyric Stage.
It's true.
So what's going on at Lyric Stage in April?
I know. So Lyric Stage in April. So we are actually doing something really exciting this year. We're partnering with Actors Shakespeare Project and doing a production of Twelfth Night that is a co-pro between the 2 companies. And that's kind of one of our philosophies looking forward, is that we believe that partnership is going to be companies that have space partnering with companies that do not have control over their own space is going to be a huge part of Boston theater in the future. So we're really excited about that. And then After 12th Night, Spiro Voludos, our producing artistic director, will sort of put a coda, although that can always be reopened, on his long-time Sondheim initiative with Pacific Overtures. So we're really, really excited to be bringing that. And at least as of the recording, it's still too soon. I can't say many details about it that are very exciting, and I wish I could. But we've got an amazing cast lined up. So we hope you'll come and see that.
All right, well, stay tuned. Well, that's all for this episode. And to everyone listening, support new plays and support your local playwrights.
Mox Nox was written by Patrick Gabridge. DeeDee was played by Becca A. Lewis. Pike was played by Cam Torres. Amanda was played by Austyn Davis. Mira was played by Marge Dunn. Stage directions were read by Courtney O'Connor. Follow us on Twitter at BossPodPlay and on Facebook. Please rate us on iTunes or your podcast player of choice. You can support us on Patreon at BossPodPlay. Our theme was composed by Thomas Deus, thomasdeusmusic.com. Additional music by bensound.com. Other than yourself, do you know of a Boston area playwright who you'd like to be featured on the show? Let us know at bosspodplay@gmail.com.